Welcome back to the Bolt Podcast. I'm Todd Bertsch, your guide on this exciting journey of personal growth and leadership, where my guests and I will share personal stories from our transformational journeys of how small changes can lead to massive results. You'll discover tips on overcoming obstacles, setting and achieving goals, building lasting habits, developing confidence, living a happy, healthy, and positive life, and so much more. If you're ready to cultivate a growth mindset and become the best version of yourself, then let's ignite your growth today. I'm excited to introduce our guest for today's show, Tiffany Lewis. Tiffany is a seasoned digital marketer with over 16 years of experience and a proud mother of two. After losing her corporate job for prioritizing motherhood, Tiffany turned adversity into opportunity by launching her own business, More Meaningful Marketing, in 2018, where she helps service-based entrepreneurs build authentic, standout brands. Known for her humorous approach to motherhood and unwavering dedication, Tiffany has successfully found the balance between pursuing her professional ambitions, doing meaningful work, and being the mom she always wanted to be. Listeners, this is going to be an exciting episode, inspiring, so please enjoy my conversation with Tiffany Lewis. Tiffany, it is so good to see you, my friend. Welcome to the Bolt Podcast.
Thank you, Todd. Super happy to be here. Really excited to talk to you today.
Awesome. So why don't we just dig in? I'm sure our listeners are curious. I know I'm curious. You talk about losing your job, your corporate job, because of, out of all things, prioritizing motherhood. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that have gone through the same thing. So I'd love to hear your story and your journey and what happened, as much as you want to share, and why you ended up starting your own business.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it. I want to be candid and transparent in this story, of course. And I think, for many years I was climbing the corporate ladder and convinced I didn't want children, to be honest. I had siblings that were a decade younger than me and really spent a lot of time not raising them, but being needed in the home. And so I just thought, kids aren't for me. I'm dedicated to marketing, love what I'm doing. And then there became a point where I became an aunt and to a little girl, and she became a big part of my world. And I started to soften to the idea of, wow, it's really joyful to be around her and seeing kids for all of their firsts and how naive and funny they are at the same time, just so brutally honest. And so I started to kind of shift a little bit. I was married pretty young, around 22, 23, after college. And, even as a couple, we didn't want children. And then post-divorce, I've been married twice. My niece stayed a part of my life, through the years, and, met someone new and decided this might not be so bad, as I watched her grow up, and then, an aunt to many, nieces and a nephew now. And so fast forward, you see when you're climbing that corporate ladder, many women having children, many dads and parents shuffling into the office so tired, needing that flexibility, maybe either foregoing promotions or being passed up. And I was determined not to be that, when kids were on my mind. And then fast forward, my daughter comes into the world, and I was so in love with her. It was like, oh my gosh, this is what the parents talk about. Everything changed. I thought I was going to be going, 60 hours a week still, traveling at my leisure, nothing was going to change. And then I was like, wow, that was really naive, because this is a big responsibility, and now everything is different. And so I started to take jobs closer to home, and I started to see what daycare brought as far as sickness and needing to be home with those little babies. I would say for the first 3 or 4 years, they really need you. Solely dependent on you being there when they're sick. They want mom a lot of the times, and how do you kind of balance that? And so that was the catalyst, really, of me losing my corporate job, is that I worked for a woman with 2 small kids, and she had a lot more support than I did. And to be fair, I maybe didn't adjust to do motherhood as gracefully as I thought I was, and I ended up getting fired. This is pre-pandemic, so flexibility and kind of that spotlight that was shown on parents through and after that wasn't available, and remote work looked different. And so it became my mission then to share that experience, and knowing I wasn't the first mom or parent, to have that happen, and knowing that I wouldn't be the last became a really big it was an adversity, as you mentioned. I say my biggest burden really became my biggest blessing in starting this company.
That's awesome. Wow, what a great story. I think it's a testament to resilience, to courage, fulfilling your passion, your dreams, and writing your own narrative. I think a lot of us, and I have 2 kids as well, and it does. You can't explain it until you go through it, right? And I think being naive, a lot of us are naive about what that responsibility is. It is the most challenging and most important and most humbling leadership role that we'll ever have. And, obviously I'm a male, so I can't speak to being a mother and what that's like and going through that whole process. But I've been married twice, and, so I can relate to some degree, and I've had a lot of females around me in the workplace and on my team and in my business, and I've seen them have their first kids and the challenges that they've went through and endured. And as an owner and leader, trying to be and lead with empathy. And any way you go about it, it's challenging, right? And I think the pandemic was eye-opening, and it was horrible for a lot of reasons and ruined a lot of lives. We lost a lot of people, but I also feel like there were a lot of good things that came out of it and a lot of opportunities. The workplace will never be the same. I guess I would ask you, let's say that you were just about to have kids and we're coming out of the pandemic or during the pandemic when things in corporate were different. Do you feel like your path would have been the same in terms of getting fired or leaving and starting your own business?
I don't think so, because I did do a brief stint in corporate, kind of post-pandemic, and through it. It was a really hard time, as you mentioned. Mm-hmm. I had my second child during the pandemic, and I was grateful actually for the timing that I could kind of stop and see what life was looking like at a slower pace, to be more present, to be more grateful. I think you're right. There were so many good things that came from that. Post-pandemic or through it, I had one of the most flexible jobs I had ever had. And I think sometimes I call myself a corporate rebel, and I think that I failed corporate a little bit because I had the flexibility then and still wasn't able to be the kind of mom I wanted to be, when the kids are sick, or, to take them somewhere on a Tuesday afternoon just because I can, and I give you so much credit, and you really inspire me the way that you have treated your employees through life and motherhood, parenthood, being dads. I know you've had quite a few firsts on your team over the years, and it's cool to see that flexibility extended throughout. I know for you, that's been a big, important part of running this business, and family first is really true and valued here. I think if I could have said, there was one thing that the pandemic did really well, it was to show that people really wanted that work-life balance and that flexibility, and maybe they weren't able to see or express it before. So I think, like I said, I had a very flexible position, after the bad experience, and I still just felt like there was something nagging at me that wanted to be just a different kind of mom. But I think a lot of parents, it seems like, have been able to flex, work around their lives more because they got a little taste of it and they knew they wanted more of it. And so I think we're in a much better place now.
Yeah, I would agree. It's interesting. We do employee surveys on a quarterly basis, and the most common thing, at least for our company, the most liked feature is the flexibility. Mm-hmm. Being able to, we call it work your way. So you can we have a beautiful office, you can come in, or you can do a hybrid situation, come in a few days, work from home a few days, or just fully work from home. Mm-hmm. And a lot of our employees have small children, and they're starting their families, and that's been incredibly important to them. And as a business owner, whether albeit small or large, if you have good people and you don't want to lose them, then you need to shift or pivot, adjust, evolve, if you will, so
absolutely.
It's different. Yeah, it is different. There's been I was looking up some research, and in the past couple of years, there's been this term coined, the great breakup. where we have a lot of females leaving the workforce. In fact, it's the largest gap we've ever seen between men and women leaving the workforce. And the 4 top reasons for this, number 1 being flexibility, 2 being work-life balance, 3, caregiving responsibilities, and then the 4th being childcare costs. And I think, pandemic or not, those have always been the challenges, right? I remember before having my first child in my first marriage, and I was like scrapping by. Our family was just trying to get by. I was still working a blue-collar job, going to school full-time. My wife at the time was a waitress, second shift, so we tapped each other out. Like I did first shift, I come home, she'd go to second, so we never saw each other, but we couldn't afford daycare. It's tough. And if you're trying to really build something for yourself, which a lot of us are. We go to school, we have a passion, we want to do good, provide for our family, but yet starting a family is a huge responsibility. So I don't know that there is a silver bullet, but I do believe that working for an employer who cares, who leads with empathy, and who's actually been there, right? Because it's really hard if you don't have kids to relate to that. That bond and wanting to be there. And when they're young, they need their parents, right? And I know I'm not, talking down on people who send their kids to childcare. I did that as well. And it's just the season of life and your situation, right? But at the end of the day, the flexibility is huge either way, right? Because the kids are going to be sick, whether they go to daycare or not. They're going to bring home stuff from school or preschool or kindergarten. And then you need to be flexible, and your day is going to have to pivot, regardless of the role you're in, whether you're, a producer or if you're in a director, VP, C-level role. So it's challenging. It's challenging, but, your story is really inspiring.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I like to see more of people like you who are running companies and extending that flexibility instead. I think a little bit before there was the generation that was like, well, we did it and we suffered through it and you should too. And so even despite, our experiences, we can still extend more grace, more patience, more understanding, more empathy to the people, that are working for and with us in a way that they can appreciate, so they don't have to have the same experience. So I think it takes a really strong leader to do that and separate that and be able to mentor, employees, contractors through those seasons. This really kind of scares me, the rate at which women are leaving the workforce. I mean, I feel like people in general have come such a long way to advocating for their needs, the flexibility, the compensation, right, the balance, and seeing women leave is a little bit scary when they've been able to obtain positions and that they wanted and desired as parents or just as leaders, and seeing that shift seems a little bit like it could set us back. Even despite being an entrepreneur, I'm a big supporter of just empowering and encouraging others, especially working moms, women that are having these experiences. We still have childcare in our home. We have ever since I left corporate, and sometimes that has been a judgment by family or friends. You're home working. Why aren't you just keeping them there? I'm like, have you ever tried to work with a 2-year-old? It's not a cakewalk, and it's not like they're just gonna go play in a corner for 2 hours. That never happens. Like if you're in the vicinity, they want you.
Sure, yeah. And
personally, I've tried it all ways. I've worked from home full-time, part-time, stayed at home with the kids. I have, had the business, worked full-time, part-time, full-time entrepreneur, and it is really hard, I think, to curb those ambitions when you have children. For some people, there are people who maybe can't do childcare, so they flex their home situation. Either they need to work or they're happier. I think we don't give enough weight to fulfillment for ourselves, especially when we become parents. I saw my mom make such tremendous sacrifices, and I mean, it's kind of a silly thing, but she had braces in her 50s, and I just thought like, oh, that's interesting. I never knew she didn't like her teeth. Well, we all had braces, and so I see that as a mom, and I see her sacrifice in working 2 or 3 jobs, and I think at times wanting the option, to be more available. Just life goes so fast. You just do what you can to survive, and then you look back and you say, like, could I have done things differently? And I think that's one of my biggest motivations, is that no matter what I choose in motherhood and work, I don't want to regret the majority, of the decisions. I think as parents, we end up with regrets no matter what. But if we can be a little more intentional, have the right mindset, have goals that are aligned with our family, our future, our work, it can really help us to be more well-rounded. I'm a better mom when I have this company and when I'm working and flexing that mental muscle at the end of the day than when I have a lot of like unfulfilled needs, whether that's work or the gym or, just some self-care. It's like, gosh, all of that sacrifice, I think we've seen the effects of that. So that's a huge motivator for me to not lose my ambition and still show the kids that work is important, and really that you get to choose what life looks like. I don't want to be at the desperation of the dollar all the time.
Right. Wow, that was beautifully said.
Thank you.
You're speaking my
Thank you.
language for sure. And I've talked about a number of those elements on several of the podcasts. It's all about defining your success, right? What does success mean to you? And I think a lot of times we are driven by the almighty dollar or the almighty title or role, especially as we're younger, and rightfully so. I did the same thing, right? So you worked hard to get through college and climb that ladder. And then at some point you realize you start a family and your priorities change and your season of life is different. And hopefully, my hope would be that the younger generation can realize this sooner. To your point about, your mom or even my folks looking back saying, did I have regrets? A lot of people get to that point late in their career or even retirement and look back and say, oh, damn, like I missed out on many important events in my kid's life. Or maybe they had a passion or a hobby that they never pursued because they were working 60, 70 hours a week. I think, we're just at a place where reflection is really important. I think a lot of people don't reflect enough, and that comes with a great morning routine or journaling or meditation, just taking that time during the day, week, or even once a month to really reflect and say, okay, what's important to me? Am I aligned with those core values and those life pillars, and staying on track, right? And being able to adjust if needed before you get so far along that you're saying, shoot, now I regret not doing this.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm a big believer in tracking. And I think, I showed you a sample of how I track my life. And it might seem a little crazy or nerdy, and my wife even makes fun of me. But I'll tell you what, for me, being a type A and the way that I operate, I need a system. And I need like that checks and balances. I know what I want, right? I know what my values are, what's important to me, but I just need a check and balance to say, am I meeting those? Because time flies so fast, like you said. So that's really important.
I think it's a big fear, or it has been, to make those adjustments. There's also another piece of this remote work culture that I think is being a little bit swept under the rug because people are happy to be home more. But I'll be honest, like being home 24/7, I realize there are days weeks that like I'm not leaving enough and getting out and getting fresh air. And, maybe I'm going to the gym, but, I'm not seeing people. I'm not checking in on relationships. It's very easy to get into so much into life balance, right? You're actually in your home the majority of the days, weeks, months without that separation of church and state. And I think sometimes for mental health, that can be super influential in the way that we operate. I know I need that break, right? Like in between my husband coming home from work, like he jumps straight in the shower. I'm like, dude, like I need a shower, like you would think because I'm at home, and back and forth to the gym that I would have found time. But to your point of really tracking and knowing what your goals are and if they're aligned, sometimes, especially when you're working part-time in a very full-time business, that you really have to be so diligent about time wasters, making sure that maybe you have a transition between, work in the evening if you're not having that drive, the meditation, the mindfulness, the check-in, and not being afraid to make a change if something doesn't suit you. I've realized that now I have kids who are 3 and 7.5, that their needs change of me, and no matter really what I want for them, it may not be the best thing for them. Whereas, my son and daughter have both been daycare kids and mostly part-time, and my daughter at 7.5 is like more interested in friends, and she enjoys being at school every day. And so they have different needs from parents, and as they find independences, that they may need more of you at times and they may require less. And so really being diligent too about what kind of parent you want to be, but also not realizing that it's not all quantity of time, it's quality.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 110%. And that took me a long time to realize that. There was a post I saw on social media one day about somebody who's a big time influencer, and he was talking about kids and time, and he said, you can't really get caught up in the quantity. You really need to focus on the quality of the time. And that's what I really started to do as well. Although I do track the amounts of quality time I get, because again, you could go by a few weeks and, I have a 12-year-old daughter, and getting time with her is tough,
Yes.
Although I feel like I'm a cool dad.
You are a cool dad.
She doesn't see that. And so I'm constantly trying to get that time, but a few weeks can go by and then I'm like, wow, I haven't spent any time with you at all. But I'm tracking it so I can see that pattern. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to maybe pivot or come from a different lens or perspective or try something different, And like you said, the kids' needs change and what their interests are. So finding something that she can relate to, that I can relate to, that we can bond over is always a good thing. But it's tricky.
For sure.
It's tricky. So I want to go back to what you said about being an employer and being, empathetic, and that is tricky. I do want to say yes. At the point we're at now, I feel like we've given extreme flexibility, but I do want to say personally, like that was a difficult decision for me to make. I knew what was needed, but personally, I love people, right? I started a business to create an environment, a culture where I can see and be around. And I genuinely love my people. So selfishly, it was really difficult to make that decision to say, you know what, you can work any way you want. And you don't ever have to come into the office. I may never see you again.
Yeah.
That was really tough for me. And I think employers are making that tough call. And I have a beautiful office space, 5,000 square feet, that's unused. So from a financial standpoint as well. So there are always two sides to every story. But at the end of the day, I didn't want to lose my team. And they're telling me, I'm listening, and they're telling me what they want. So I gave it to them. And, they're still here today. So
you have a lot of longevity on your team, and I think that speaks volumes to how you've been able to flex as a leader. And I can relate to that as a parent and as an employer, as having been an employee, is that so much of like raising your business, raising your family is not about what you think is best for the family or the business. It's like how they perceive your efforts, right? You could be doing what you think are all the right things. Like, well, we need people and we need to nurture each other and we have to have that buzz and that collaboration. And it is so important in marketing, especially. And then, letting people kind of make their decision of what works for them can be hard, especially as parents too. Watching our kids make decisions, it's a lot of holding on and letting go. And I remember you wrestling with that decision, and we've known each other for quite some time, and it's selfless, to be able to look and understand what the employees need, but that doesn't mean it doesn't contradict your spirit of what you feel like you need. It's
right.
To your point, a balance of, the push and pull.
Right. So I want to go back to the business, more meaningful marketing. First off, congrats. Over 6 years now.
Yeah, thank you.
50% of small businesses don't make it past 5 years. So that's a huge accomplishment. So good for you.
Thank you.
Sorry,
taking
a stand and going for it, but also, obviously you're doing good things. So tell us a little bit about your business and the type of work that you do, the clients that you serve.
Yeah, thank you. So, when I started the business, it was really like I think so many, women and men just in the workforce thinking, how do I get more time back? And so, loving marketing, I was really in the technical side, engineering, automation, manufacturing operations, and very B2B. I was really missing the B2C side. But, in marketing, sometimes that's not as well paid. And so I did chase money at that point in my career. And having my daughter, I just thought, I make this joke like I would have lived in a cardboard box, but I didn't know if my husband would still love me. So more meaningful marketing was about really getting to the heart of marketing and being able to still thrive professionally while raising a family. And it's really about less technical and just more empathy, to your point, more caring, more personal branding, getting to the root of what makes a business owner start a business, maintain a business, grow a business, and getting those like little golden nuggets that maybe not everyone is talking about. And I mostly work with women, but I think that's because there's like a vulnerability tied to the work that we do together is, okay, you have your products, your services, your offerings, but who are you as a person and who are you as a leader and a parent, and how do you differentiate in a market? I worked with a lot of real estate agents early, and I thought like, they can sell homes. Why are they coming to me, for marketing? And I didn't want to rock the boat, but it was like a burning question. And I found out, that like the more seasoned agents were salespeople, but the newer ones coming in were relationship people, and they were very focused there. And real estate became very saturated through the pandemic as the housing market was hot, inventory was low, and people were really looking for a way, agents specifically, to differentiate what they were doing. Anyone with a license can help you buy or sell a home, but what's different about you, how you operate, the brokerage you're a part of, are you a solo agent, how do you do business? That makes all the difference in a world with, why someone will come to you and keep coming to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So what types of clients are you looking for now?
I would say I work with a lot of women entrepreneurs, teams of 3 or less, maybe have either DIY'd their marketing or have hired some of it out but have had not a great experience. I think a lot of industries have stigmas attached to them. Marketing is a big one. There are a lot of people who will ghost or take a website down when things don't go their way, or maybe they do a piece of marketing and to no fault of theirs kind of leave their clients hanging. So I would say someone who wants that really cohesive approach to digital. They're looking at, the impacts of video, what it means to have a website, how they serve their prospects and clients on social, looking at their email lists, segmenting them appropriately, speaking to the right people with the right message at the right time on all, outlets. So that's been really impactful, and it's more meaningful marketing. It seems like the name it tells what it is, but I really care. I care about giving someone a piece of the puzzle or the whole thing. I'm not going to look at just social when I work with someone. 9 times out of 10 clients come to me for that, and I'm like, well, do you even like your brand? What is your brand? I don't know. No, I don't love it, but it'll do for now. And I'm like, no.
Right.
Like, you have to love it. You're walking, you're talking it. Like,
yeah,
you're going to see it a lot.
Yeah.
You better really love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you better, because you're going to need to stand behind it, right? And then, like you said, it is your brand. And I love the name.
Thank you.
And that you can tell that you care and you have passion for what you do and the people that you serve. And you're definitely a servant leader.
Thank you.
Which is really important to me. What are some of the biggest challenges that you faced being an entrepreneur? I know I can go back when I started, and it's tough, right? Anything that stands out that you've ran into?
I think people always say, I hear in the entrepreneur world especially, I want to have $10,000 months, I want to have $50,000 months, but the reality is, and a coach that I worked with said, like, well, that's a paycheck. Like, if you want the same amount of money every month, like, go get a salaried job. And I heard that, and I was like, there is some truth to that. It's like, you get to be flexible, and there's something to be said about, like, rowing the boat that you've built. But I think for entrepreneurs, like, we have so many ideas, so it's challenging to know which ones to act on. I know I've made mistakes on alignment many times, brought in people that I wanted to work with because I was excited and maybe we didn't align, and so that's been a mistake. It's hard when you're raising a family and you need cash. We're a dual income household. And so finding that right balance of cash flow and predictability and knowing when to hire, and when to expand. I've definitely expanded a team early on. And then I was like, wow, none of these people almost are aligned with what I'm doing and where I'm going. And you realize quickly that there are a lot of transactional leaders out there that will chase the record months. And it's hard not to fall into that when you see it so much in the space. You're kind of attracting the same types of people and just not falling victim to what they're doing, and so much so that you dilute who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. And that goes back to defining what success means to you, right? So if it is the almighty dollar, maybe being an entrepreneur, having your own business is not for you. Maybe you do need to go work corporate and have a very sustainable, consistent paycheck. It's tough, especially starting off. Is there anything that you know now that you wished you knew then when you started?
Yeah, I think one thing that helps me stay aligned, and for all business owners, is just to be true to yourself. We're in a place where you don't have to hide behind a brand. I always say the person that you meet, on the street should be the exact same person you portrayed online. There should be no surprise that there's a lot of business owners, people on LinkedIn that you thought they would be a certain way based on the content they're putting out, and you meet them in person, you're like, oh, not my thing, which is okay.
Right.
Everybody operates differently, but I think having that North Star within of your likes, your dislikes, your obligations, your version of success, your routine, what your life, thrives in the best possible way, what that looks like, and finding that out early, and then not being afraid to adjust if you have to.
Right. Yep. Pivot, evolve. That's all. You're always going to do that. I felt like it's really every 5 years.
Yeah,
it doesn't mean a full rebrand or pivot, but it's good just to reflect, take a look at what you've done and where you're heading, and any mistakes you've made, and learn from that and grow. What do you love most about owning your own business?
Definitely the opportunity to make a direct impact. That was something that in corporate, because I did work for larger companies, there's so many layers, so many degrees of separation between starting and finishing a project, and just having that direct impact, seeing the difference it makes on a first-hand basis is truly rewarding, and something that I felt like I was just striving for all the time but never really feeling. I think that's the best part. But if I could go back to what you're saying, one thing you've learned, it's when people see me online and they say, oh, well, you're doing it all. How do you do it? Can you help me? And over the years, I've realized different people have different seasons of life, different circumstances. They may be a single income home, right? You have to know things about benefits, what that looks like for you and your family, what kind of stable income you have, what assets you have, how many months you can survive if you don't make another dollar. Those are real conversations to be had. And so, do you have multiple properties you want to own and maintain? There are all these life decisions. So, if you look at someone and you really want to be like that, ask them to be transparent, answer those hard questions, find someone you're comfortable with doing that, and have a mentor that can kind of dissect that on a really realistic basis for your personal circumstance.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that all goes into the business plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a life motto or mantra that you follow?
I do. So I love a couple of quotes, and I think I shared one with you, is sometimes God breaks your heart to save your soul. That one really resonates with me. Looking back in hindsight, a winner is just a loser who tried one more time. Seems like pessimistic at first thought, but really, you never know how close you were to reaching a goal if you stop.
Right.
And then the other one we say in our house quite a bit is patience and grace are what we give when we love someone, including ourselves. Can be really hard on myself. I see it in my daughter too, I'm sure. Some of that has been me not being as conscious about how I worked through that. But I think, having patience with ourselves, we just want it all so fast and we want everything. And that instant gratification is very easy to fall into in the world that we're in, and realizing that most overnight successes were many years in the making. When you said 6 or so years for more meaningful marketing, I was like, wow, feels like 20. There's a lot of hustle in there.
Right. Yeah, there is a lot of hustle. Yeah, and Patience and grace, boy, those have been two things that I've struggled with, my whole life. And I did a whole episode on the pause button, and we've talked a little bit about my journey with patience.
Yeah.
And then grace has been something that my life coach has worked with me on for the past couple of years. That was my word last year, was grace. Grace for me, giving myself grace, because I am a perfectionist by trade, self-proclaimed, and I'm not proud of that, honestly. I used to be, but I'm trying to get away from that, because being a perfectionist is about there being an end game. And like I said, I don't feel like there is. It's an infinite game. We just continue to iterate and make changes and be the best that we can be. So, yeah, I don't know. It's all about growth. I mean, that's my mantra, is just lifelong learner.
I love that there is so much self-awareness and appreciation and even advocacy for really doing what's best for you, because you've gone through the generation of, you do what you have to do. There's this linear approach to life, and then you get the golden thing that you're looking for, the golden egg. And it's just, life isn't linear. And so even in entrepreneurship, I think a lot of businesses, entrepreneurs, when you work for a company, you want that raise, you want that dollar, you want that recognition. And then you realize that once you've gotten it, like, what's next? There's always something next.
Right.
So being content and being diligent and patient, I think, goes a long way.
Oh yeah, it's definitely the key to everything, really. And it just changes your whole mindset.
Absolutely.
What's something people don't know about you that they would be surprised to learn?
Oh, that's a really good one. I love to be outside. That may not surprise people. I live in Ohio, and I would prefer to live somewhere where there are seasons, but I love to be outside. We're a big family who likes to adventure, bike, hike, be out on the trails. I think when I had children, I was like, gosh, I'm never going to get back to the things I love again, but it takes a little more planning and a little more practice, but I really enjoy doing bike rides, especially. We have some beautiful trails here. We even go with my parents, so they're in on it. We do a lot of family outings. That's something that I really enjoy and hope to, create almost like a tradition, that we do more with our parents and the kids. I can't even vacation without my kids. Like, we went to Denver and we took a nanny. They're like, oh, you need time without the kids. Like, I can't wait to have time without the kids. And I'm like, I can't go down the street to a concert where I don't have service and not have contact with the kids. So I don't think that's surprising. But on the spot, I'm trying to think of what else could be more interesting about me.
Yeah. Well, you talk about humor a lot.
Oh, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about this humorous approach to motherhood and life in general. I think we need more humor in our life as a society.
Yeah, I really, when you get on social, you do see highlight reels, and I really try to pull back the veil and the curtain and just say, like, no, like, take a picture of my toddler, like, in the corner, with something fun, some funny hat and some snack that's half on the ground. Like, that is real life. It's like, I'm on a call right now, and this is what's happening, and just, the smart things my daughter says. And it's really just, I think, important to know that everybody has that human element, that there really isn't perfection online. And so, I have conversations with the kids. I post those on social, the crazy outfits. The other day, my son was in a Spider-Man Halloween costume from last year. It's like one of them that has abs and muscles, and he's just sitting at the dinner table eating. He also has a Santa hat on. It's just like, you can't make this stuff up sometimes. They're just goofy. My son the other day, I'm like, last one to get ready is a rotten egg, because, they're moving like sloths in the morning. I'm like, we don't have time. You guys got to get on the bus and go. And he just stands there like in his little underwear, and he's like walking around. I'm like, you're going to be the rotten egg. Like, come on, this means hurry. And he just stops and he's like, well, I want to be the rotten egg. I'm like, oh my gosh, you do? Okay, well, that hasn't worked since. He wants to be the rotten egg.
Yeah, that's funny. And kids are great for a number of reasons, but one, they just keep us humble. And I think one of the things that we lose as we get into our careers, and being professionals and even parents, is that we lose that childlike presence within us. We're in a box and we take everything so serious. If there's a practice by Shirzad Chamine in the Positive Intelligence Program where he asks you to go find a picture of your childhood where you were like truly happy. And for me, it's like playing baseball. I loved baseball, and I would cry when it rained and the game would get rained out. But I can go back to that and see that smile and that joy and picture that day and really try to represent that now in my life, in the day that's coming up. So I think if we just can relate and go back to our childhood every now and then and remember those moments and try to bring that in, it'll make us a little bit different, a little bit more easygoing.
Mm-hmm. I saw a quote a while back that said, if you want to know everything there is to know about life, ask a 6-year-old. And I thought that's such a great, message to think about how much we grow past that point in our life, and being able to tap into it with joy and childlike, excitement, I think is important. I don't remember the in-between days as a kid. I remember the memories. I remember the Disney trip. I remember, sports and
Right.
my parents being present. I don't know if I remember the in-between days. I find it hard to play as a parent. Like, I'm an older mom, and I'm like, I don't want to play Play-Doh, the mess, and it's hard sometimes to tap into that, like, moment, find the moment and enjoy the moment.
Right.
I think there's this, like, misconception that all parents are down on the floor playing with their kids 24/7, because that's what we're seeing on Instagram. But really, we're just trying to feed them and get them to bed at a reasonable time so we all get some rest.
Right, and brush their teeth.
Oh, yeah, that one. Yep.
But I will get on the floor and play some Lego anytime.
Oh, yes.
I'll drop everything to do Lego.
I don't like that Lego has, like, become very niche. Like, I don't want to just play Frozen Legos. I want to build the empire.
Right. Well, there's a lot there. So let's play a little game, and it might be a little morbid, but we're at the end of the road, end of life. How do you want to be remembered? What would they say at your eulogy?
Yeah, I mean, this is a big one for me. I definitely want to leave my kids with more financial literacy than I had, and to have a really good foundation. But I do want to be remembered as someone who was able to be good at work and life and happy doing it and balanced doing it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that.
And showing the kids, that they can do it too, because I think there's so much of being like a slave to the job, and so much unhappiness in those early years of sacrifice and doing the grunt work, and like, you don't have to stay somewhere, you have so much time.
Right. Oh, I think that's a great message, and would be a great role model for your kids.
Thank you.
I know we've had lots of discussions. You're a big advocate for personal growth. Mm-hmm. Is there one thing that you're working on this year to make yourself a better person for yourself, for your kids, your family, the people you serve? Or is there one habit that you're trying to create or change this year?
Yeah, I am really being more intentional about getting time on the calendar to have experiences. I'm doing the few times a week gym trips. That's been really big for me. I think there's this idea, like we talked about, is quantity of time. It's like, oh, well, I'm available every night for the kids and my husband, and that's really easy for them when they have a flow. But I'm like, it's not working for me. Like, I actually am making it a goal to be outside of the house more now, because I realize, like, everybody also needs that distance to figure things out. It's creating some independence in the household. It's creating some, the absence makes the heart grow fonder. You do tend to take things for granted when you're in it. So I'm asking myself, what are the experiences I want to have? That's really where the money's going. We donate a lot of our time to individuals as families, doing some of that charitable work, and getting the kids, to understand gratitude early, I think, is really important. I went without as a kid, and so that's a big motivation for me to not overgive to them. It's a balance, but to understand that, there's a difference for people in the way that they grow up, and that we do want to be thankful for what we have.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a lot of great messages in there, especially the gratitude one. Mm-hmm. And it's tough. I didn't grow up with much either. My parents worked 2 jobs their whole life, trying to just give us some decent things, and a decent education. And it's tough because I have the means now, and I could spoil my kids, but what message am I sending? I'm not helping them build any resilience.
Yeah.
It's almost like, I want to say a silver spoon, but in that same mantra. And it's tough, and especially when you're busy, it's just a lot easier to just keep them happy and just buy that $100 Lego set.
Yeah.
That really should be for Christmas, but hey, I want to get some time with my daughter. So if she really wants to do that, $100 is worth it.
Yeah.
Really, if I'm going to get a couple weekends working on this together, phone down, really intentional, and being present, it might be worth it. But I get you. It's a tough one.
Yeah.
And I think I've heard a lot of people talk about that on podcasts, especially like really successful people who have lots of money, and it would be very easy for them to go down that road, but they're being intentional about trying to build some things into the process of, raising their kids, so they understand a little bit about what it's like.
Yeah, and I think for grandparents too, like you have to really advocate for that model. We grew up and we have more now, but like the grandparents are spoiling, and I've had to have conversations like, please take them somewhere. Let's all go somewhere together. They don't need another toy.
Right.
My daughter said this morning, I said, your room is a mess. We've got to work on that. And she's like, well, it's messy because I have too many toys. I'm like, what a bad problem to have.
Oh boy. Wow. Yeah.
Which isn't really, I mean, she does have a lot of stuff we need to go through
Right.
it, but it was just kind of like, I think I need to do something about that.
Yeah, that's totally something my daughter would say. So coming to closing here, just a couple of quick kind of rapid fire questions.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite books on marketing or personal growth that you'd like to share, recommend?
Yeah, I think The Big Leap is always a big one. Like the central part of that book, and just the mental mindset and being ready for, I think so many people are ready for the quick success, but they don't have the foundational mindset stuff, in place, and just really being prepared to do that and what it requires.
Okay.
So that's a staple for me. I'm also a big Great Gatsby fan, classic, a lot of like classic literature types of books that I've been able to share with my niece who loves vintage libraries, and we venture out to those.
Okay. Awesome. And is there one big takeaway that you want our listeners to learn today? What would that be?
Yeah, I think find your version of happiness and balance. It doesn't have to look like everyone else's or anyone else's. It's not, a competition. Really, you, at the end of the day, have to be happy with what you've achieved, and that doesn't have anything to do, with everyone else. And I think that's a hard lesson. I think it's a lifelong lesson, but I think it's the most important. I know I want to be remembered as a happy wife and mom, and that can be challenging for me. So always being able and willing to make that pivot for yourself early and often if you have to.
Yeah. Wow. Love that. Mic drop that and,
Yeah.
and make that a quote. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Well, this has been great, Tiffany. How can people learn more about you and connect with you?
Yeah, so my website's moremeaningfulmarketing.com. I'm on all the social platforms by the same name. Really excited. I have some free resources on my site and always open to conversation, client or not client. Love to meet people, love to network, and encourage and support.
Awesome. Well, this has been really great. I appreciate you taking the time and to share your personal story with us. It's inspiring for me, and I hope it will be for our listeners as well. I have a lot of respect for you and what you do and the way you handle yourself. I think you're a great role model for really anybody who's out there that's a mother, that's an entrepreneur, that's really trying to be the best person they can be. And that's what this show is all about. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been awesome.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. You are on your way to growth, transformation, and joy. If you find this episode helpful, please like and share with your friends, and by all means, please leave a review. You can also view the show notes and subscribe to the Bolt newsletter at toddbertsch.com. Remember, real change takes time. Start small and watch the growth